Hello and welcome back to the Arcane Forge. My name's Josh. Today I wanted to do a slightly different video to normal. As you may know, I took a couple of weeks off as a holiday as I welcomed a little goblin called Myrtle into my life. This is said goblin, and she's very, very sweet, but extremely noisy. Either way, immediately prior to taking this holiday, I had a phone call from the BBC here in Scotland who asked if I wanted to come on the radio and talk about Dungeons and Dragons. More importantly, they said that I might have the chance to actually play Dungeons and Dragons live on air for the British listening public. It was an amazing opportunity and something that I absolutely could not pass up. The show that they invited me onto was something called the Stephen Jardine Show, which is pretty crazy because Stephen Jardine is a very well-known guy here in Scotland. He used to be on the news a lot, for example. He was a news anchor. And he has his own show. And once a week on a Friday, he has something called a punter with a passion, where someone with a really non-conventional hobby, in my case D&D, comes on the show and tries to convince Stephen's listeners that this is worth taking up in their free time. Thankfully, the BBC were cool enough to let me use the recording of that audio of my time in the BBC. So I thought I'd play it back for you now. Enjoy, guys.
Back to the Gold Coast in Australia in about 10 minutes' time, with fingers crossed for more medal wins for Scotland. We'll bring you that live, but right now it's time, as we always do on a Friday around now, to speak to someone with an interesting, unusual hobby in our weekly feature, Punter with a Passion. The aim is that it will encourage maybe you or me to give it a go. We've done synchronised swimming, ultra running, beekeeping. Remember when Batman came into the studio last week? We had a knitting enthusiast. This week it's the turn of a former baker turned dungeon master, who every weekend leads his friends on adventures in his living room in the world of Dungeons and Dragons. Welcome to the programme, Josh.
Thank you very much. Lovely to meet you.
Josh, good to see you. Tell us about Dungeons and Dragons. How did you first get into it?
So I first got into it when I was a kid in school. It was very, very popular in school among the sort of less athletic, more library-bound among us, and it's a fantastic, fantastic game to get into. It's a very social thing to do, and it's sort of equal parts improv class and a choose-your-own-adventure novel, basically. And basically what you do is you gather round with a bunch of your mates, can be anywhere between 1 and I've seen groups of 10, and you basically just go through a story that one person is writing, and everybody picks a character. They choose and invent their own character in that story, and together they kind of write their favourite sort of TV show that you'd binge on Netflix together every week.
And how long can this go on for?
As in sort of like individual sort of campaigns, or just one session at a time?
Yeah, well, maybe the campaigns. Can this run over weeks?
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Months?
So the original game, when it first came out, I don't know if you've seen Stranger Things before, but the kids are playing that in Stranger Things, and the kind of version that they're playing there was designed originally for just, you sit down, sort of standard games night, and you play one session. It lasts for a couple hours, and then you go home. But now it's evolved into something massive that takes months, sometimes years. I've just finished a campaign that lasted for 2 years, and the sort of thing that's bringing this hobby into the limelight is a podcast of voice actors called Critical Role, and I believe that they just finished their first campaign that lasted for 10 years. Wow. So yeah,
is it about winners, Josh? Are you looking to win something at the end of this, or is it all about the taking part and the skill of making the story?
Interesting. I suppose it's not really about winning. It's not a competitive game in that sense. You can make it competitive if you like, but the way the game is generally designed is for a team to accomplish tasks together, facing odds and traps and puzzles and monsters and anything that your imagination can conjure up. But it's all about succeeding as a group together, basically.
Who plays? Who does this appeal to?
Pretty much everybody. I mean, it's got a very wide audience now that's only growing. It used to be very sort of the kind of people who are playing computer games a lot, but it's definitely changing. So, I can't really necessarily say who. Pretty much everybody. But one sort of group that is very popular with are people who are maybe a little bit timid and a little bit quiet, because in the nature of creating your own character and getting to embody this character, and it's a role-playing game. You step into the shoes of that character that you created. You can be pretty much anything. So it really brings people out of their shells. It makes people a lot more confident and a lot more talkative. It's definitely what happened to me when I was in school. I was extraordinarily nervous as a person, and I absolutely hated raising my hand in class and things like that. I started playing Dungeons and Dragons, and then I was on the debate team. I liked chatting. I started acting, and now I spend most of my days making YouTube videos and things like that about Dungeons and Dragons without sort of the fear of speaking to people and being seen.
And you play every weekend, more or less, Josh?
I play, my group sort of gathers roughly every Tuesday is what we kind of do. And we'll play from about 7 o'clock until 11 if we can contain ourselves. And that's when we can cut ourselves off and we all need to go and get some sleep for work the next day.
What's the longest you played?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so much to my shame, this was very coffee and energy drink based. It's a very unusual one, but I have played for a solid weekend before, like literally from you get up, you are at someone's house at about 10 o'clock, and then you leave absolutely shattered about, at 7 o'clock on Sunday, and it's just, it was amazing. It was a really great story, but I don't think I'll be rushing to do that too often.
I want to know more about this, so stick with us, Josh, right now. We need to take a quick pause. I'd just gone 11:31. Gavin's got our travel for us this morning.
We only had 15 minutes, and we were constantly being interrupted with different parts of the Commonwealth Games that were being played at the same time the BBC needed to cover.
We're about to cross back to the Commonwealth Games for cycling and a Scotland medal, hopeful in just a few seconds' time. But in the meantime, let's wrap up our Punter with a Passion discussion. Josh with me this morning, who is a Dungeons and Dragons fanatic. It says here, Josh, what's the game that's underway at the moment?
So my current campaign, kind of thing. So I've basically just wrapped up one where I was the Dungeon Master, and that was a lengthy sort of apocalyptic high fantasy campaign where there was very, very high stakes of a looming and an insidious threat from another world. And then later on, another person in the group took a turn as the Dungeon Master, the storyteller, the person who's writing the whole world. And we were playing on a fantasy world that had developed on a planet that was shaped like a ring. We all lived on the inside of this ring, and so we've just finished that campain as well.
You're one of these flat Earth people.
Oh no, don't worry. Well, not a ring, definitely, which is obviously the truth. No. This is the benefits of Dungeons and Dragons. You can make literally anything. You can make a planet on the inside of a ring. You can make it on a flat Earth if you so desire. But there's no requirement to follow any rules whatsoever when it comes to conjuring your own story.
Josh, stay with us here. Sorry, we need to break away just for a second here. Isn't it more competition throughout the day? And we'll bring it to you live right here on BBC Radio Scotland as it happens. But back to Josh, with me in the studio here, Dungeons and Dragons fanatic, and very patient as well, the way things have been dragging on this morning. Josh, can anyone play? Can I play?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, if you have the time, we can go through a little bare bones adventure right now.
Well, let's do it.
Now, admittedly, rather than D&D, this is a very stripped back version, just to give his viewers a kind of chance to understand more what it's like, rather than get into the nitty-gritty. We only had 15 minutes.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I've taken the liberty of preparing you a tiny little character sheet here with an illustration of you as your character here.
It's me.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got a sword, I've got a cape. I like this.
Yeah, exactly. Who doesn't want a cape?
And my hair's not too grey, so yeah, I'm quite happy with this. But there's some complicated stuff behind it as well.
Don't worry. So there's a lot of numbers there, but they're just for you to sort of absorb. If we were playing a full adventure, that would be really important, but we're going to do a really bare bones. This is what Dungeons and Dragons is kind of like, okay?
Have you checked out the elf and safety on this, by the way?
The elf, oh my goodness. I'm just gonna leave. No,
Let's do this, come on.
Okay, no worries, okay. So we're in a high fantasy world. Picture Lord of the Rings, okay? There are elves, there are magic, there's everything like that. A few weeks ago, you travelled to the city of Avalon, where you were expecting to meet someone named Alistair Myregrave. There was apparently a death in your family, a family member you've never heard of, and you're supposed to go through their will. You met them in a cafe, very briefly. They were a man in a tall, dark suit. You took a sip from your cup of tea.
I hope they weren't blocking a table using their laptop. We've talked about that already this morning.
I heard that as well. Yeah, no, that's the absolute worst. Thankfully, they weren't. They were just two lovely cups of tea steaming away on the table waiting for you. You took a sip of one of yours, and then you blacked out. You have no idea what happened. The next thing that you remember now is waking up because there's this searing cold around your ankles, and you can hear this kind of jangling behind you as you realize some really stiff muscles in your shoulders because your hands are shackled behind your back. And what are they shackled to? Well, you feel that it's warm, it's metal. You think it's a copper pipe of some kind. And as you open your eyes blearily,
I've had this dream. I think I'm not naked by any chance, am I? I'm sure I've had this dream.
It's your character. You can be naked, but it makes it a little bit difficult for the radio. We'll say your clothes for now. Whatever's going on in your head is up to you.
Got my cape on.
Yeah, totally. You've got your cape on. Yeah. As you open your eyes, it's a little bit fuzzy, but what you can see inside is that there's another person shackled to more pipes on the other side of the room. But the room is not what you expect. This is not Saw. This is not something terrifying. You are in a fairly waterlogged, but otherwise a very lavish room. It looks a little bit dilapidated. It looks a little bit worn. There's an oil lamp burning in the corner. There's a small desk covered in papers. And there's
sounds like BBC Radio Scotland office, actually.
Yeah, I know. I actually passed this on the way in.
Is this where you got the inspiration from?
This is definitely on the way in. I saw all of this, so this is very impromptu. There's a pile of maybe clothes in the corner next to a large bolted wooden door that's buckling with all this water on the ground. And you can see in the corner, just next to the desk that I mentioned earlier, there seems to be what looks like a gramophone speaker, which suddenly whistles into life. And there's this sort of magical electrical clicking noise. And a voice comes over this speaker system in a very sort of grainy, old-timey way. And it says, "Fantastic. I'm so glad you're awake. My name's Alistair. I'm sorry for the deception here, but I needed to make sure that you're ready for the test ahead. So if you are ready, hopefully you'll be able to escape this room before I come down there and sort you out myself in 60 seconds.
Oh, blight, 60 seconds?
60 seconds.
Okay. So, that's where I step in.
What would you like to do? You are shackled to a copper pipe. There's a sleeping man also shackled to another copper pipe on the other side of the room. You're in a room no larger than the one that we're in right now.
Well, I've been manacled so long and I had nothing to eat for so long that my wrists have become super slim. So I'm able to slip my shackles instantly.
This is great roleplay. You've done this before. I can tell you've done. Yeah, obviously. Yeah, no, you slip them to the floor, and there's this satisfying plop into the water beneath you. You stand up, and you can give yourself a little bit of a stretch, and you can observe a little bit more about the room. Is there anything you'd like to inspect? Would you like to wake up this man? Would you like to check the door, check the little gramophone, check this pile of clothes in the water?
Well, I can see the magic key that is sticking out from the jacket of the man.
Who's really?
Manacled. So okay. I go over and take the magic key, and I use it to open the door.
My goodness, my goodness.
I'm out.
Now, at this point, I pretty much hesitated because I was just about to, stand up and let the DM gloves come off. It was so cheeky with the whole key in the pocket thing. I was going to go like, actually, you can't do that. That's not kind of how the storytelling thing works. But I thought, you know what, we have 15 minutes. It's better that he and his listeners understand the feel of the storytelling kind of aspect than it is for me to go actual DM on his ass right now and being too presumptuous. I more love the fact that he instantly threw himself into it. I was assuming that I would have to sort of talk to him about, what he could do with his turn, what kind of actions he could take, and get to say, oh, you can do anything. This game allows you to do whatever you like. But no, he immediately jumped into different ideas. He wanted to try some things. And you know what? I was just super pleased that he was getting involved with it, getting into it. So let it slide.
You are out into what looks like a curved corridor. It's a beautiful curved corridor. It's far more metallic than the lavish surroundings that you're used to in that previous room. And there's this kind of acrid stench in the area around you because the water in here has gone stagnant. It's been a while.
Josh, I'm starting to see how that we could do this. This could just go on forever.
I know, right? Yeah, this is the love of it. This is the love of it.
I've got sucked into this here. I forgot we're on the radio there for a minute.
Yeah, it is a little bit like a radio play that you play with your friends.
Well, sadly, we do have to move on now.
That's quite right.
But I think you've taken us into a magical place. So as always we do this feature, you've got 60 seconds to sum this up for us and give us the big sell. Why Dungeons & Dragons is something that we should all be interested in. 60 seconds on the clock, go.
Okay, so if you want to meet up with your mates every week without going to the pub, you don't want to spend almost any money whatsoever. You only need a couple of books and your mates and a couple of dice. You want to boost your confidence, and you want to play any character you can possibly conceive of, or build any world you can possibly create in a story that's going to last as long as you want it to and become as addictive as that Netflix series that you absolutely adore. Then Dungeons & Dragons is 100% the game that you need to be playing on a weekly basis.
Josh, we've been doing this for 3 months now, and I wasn't keen on synchronised swimming, to be honest. Beekeeping was terrifying. Ultra running, you've got to be joking. This is the first time I would say I'm in.
My goodness. Well, you've got the voice for it as well. This is the thing. You can embody a really cool character with that voice.
Wow, you count me in on this. Dungeons & Dragons is the future. Josh, pleasure to meet you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to meet you as well.
Thank you very much indeed. At 11:47, it's Friday morning. It's BBC Radio Scotland.
Anyway, guys, I hope you really enjoyed that. Stephen turned out to be an absolutely fantastic guy. I was so impressed with how quickly he took it on board, how interested he was in the idea of it, and how open he was to new ideas. Really, really great guy. The BBC were fantastic as well. They were really lovely. They looked after me really well. And damn, I wanted their recording setup, because good grief, that was seriously cool. It was leagues away from anything that I have access to. So I hope you enjoyed this. I had absolutely tons of fun doing it. I really, really loved going on the radio. I would do it every single day if I had the opportunity. It was really, really cool. And although it was really watered down, I've officially played D&D live on the air, which was so cool. Hopefully you got a kick out of it too. But until next time, I'll have to say goodbye for now. It looks like little Myrtle here is getting hungry. See you later. Mm-hmm.